we're going to get very in-depth with a lot of different questions throughout the day. But why don't we start off with a nice fundamental question about, you know, who holds the keys to tomorrow's IT security leadership? And I guess one of the lovely superficial questions which we need to address first of all is, how has COVID changed your work and what has not changed? So with no particular order on my screen, I've got Nick Padron. Nick, take us away. What has changed and what has not changed? A nice superficial question to get us going.
Yeah, no, thank you. And, you know, really pleased that, you know, we were able to kind of get this thing organized. I, you know, wanted to do this last year, so here we are today. So thank you so much, Philip. Yeah, you know, when this whole thing started, I think, you know, Fairfield was already, you know, going down the journey of an Office 365 path. We were already looking at zero trust and identity access management. And when COVID happened, it was really a testament of being prepared for business continuity in a new type of disaster that wasn't really planned for, right? We'd always kind of looked at traditional tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, things of that nature, but never anything that would impact the human element in such a way. But fortunately, because we had engaged and had started to move towards a hybrid, you know, outsourced model from an infrastructure standpoint, personnel-wise, as well as infrastructure from a cloud standpoint, we were able to leverage some of those tool sets, such as Palo Alto, you know, Cisco, CloudGenix, and Citrix. And between those blended approaches, whether they were hardware VPNs or software VPNs, we were able to kind of get 1,600 people working from home effectively within about 14 days. So, you know, that was, you know, a lot of, you know, blood, sweat, and tears went into the infrastructure ahead of the game. But for those that didn't have some of those, you know, preparations, I think it was a little different, right? But that's kind of how we navigated it. It wasn't one size fits all. We had to make some, you know, security, you know, bypasses here and there, but we wanted to leverage multi-factor. We wanted to leverage software VPN. We wanted to leverage terminal services to get everybody working. So outside of that, you know, our roadmap definitely pivoted. We had some ERP strategies to accommodate. You know, we had to move our accounting departments to a full digital change around check writing. And if you don't know what Fairfield does, we're in the multifamily, we're residential. So we have about 140 communities nationwide where we operate and manage apartments. So we've got about 200,000 residents that we're, you know, caring after, if you will. And so, you know, we had to figure out ways to get them serviced with new digital experiences around onboarding and offboarding employees, as well as, you know, acquisitions and dispositions that were already planned for. So quite a bit of change, quite a bit of, I would say probably about 20 or 30 projects got, you know, started when we went into that March, April timeframe. And we're just now, you know, getting back on track with some of the other projects that we needed to get going on. So hopefully that kind of, yeah.
I know, I like it. And you know, when we did these events immediately during the lockdown back in March, a lot of the talk was, oh no, it's all changed. But I like this dynamic of, all right, now where have we been and what has not changed? So Eric, what's changed for you and maybe what's not changed?
It's a good question. I tell you, and I'll just, what hasn't changed is, you know, many companies, as a managed service security provider, many companies had an existing VPN presence. And so for those particular companies, we categorize those companies in several categories. One were, you know, setting up VPN or remote access to support those employees and or executives that travel or work for remote locations. And then we had other you know, categories of companies that were already a mature, supported a mature, had a mature policy and a governance program to support a work from home workforce. And then the third category of companies were those companies that were already adopting significant cloud strategy and technologies. And we found that for those companies that adopted or were adopting or in the process of adopting cloud strategy, a lot of those companies were less at risk because of COVID, because many of their applications and data is in the cloud, accessed by the cloud, and inherently taking advantage of those organic cloud security strategies. For those companies that had already had or had in place an architecture to support a work from home workforce through VPN, we found that it was just, maybe a 30-day, 45-day process of trying to increase their licenses to support concurrent connections because the number of employees were having to access those strategies, access that technology during the beginning of the crisis. And then you had another, the other side of it was we had those companies that had VPN remote access just to support those executives or the sales force, or that smaller crowd that was traveling, which was a completely emergency crisis. It was having to rewrite their policies, having to rethink their work from home strategy, having to go out and quickly and rapidly adopt, a remote access strategy, a VPN technology, or even a third-party provider, and quickly get that adopted and implemented to support a work from home or work from anywhere workforce. And that was, a sort of our key focus in ensuring that category of companies, we honed in on and focused on those companies to support them during a crisis. So that was my experience at the beginning of April, May timeframe, during the beginning of the crisis.
No, I like it, and it's good. It's good we can now see that they've come through the process a bit. It's almost like we should have postponed some of the questions we asked people back in March to now, but I don't know. Nikolas, what about you? I know you've got a large variety of customers out there. What changed, but maybe what didn't? Maybe that's the better question.
Sure. So first, thanks for having me today. I'll start off with what has changed. So in terms of that, the attack surface has definitely expanded, especially to foreign environments like employees' home offices. So now we have to worry about, okay, what's lurking in this employee's home office? Is their kid going to try to hack into our systems, right? Because kids will be kids, as we saw in the Twitter hack. Are they going to push many companies to go to the cloud, which is what has happened, right? A lot of companies have had to move to the cloud. And in doing so, they haven't really realized the resources that are available to them. In terms of what has not changed, we have not changed our need for security awareness. If anything, we are now really in need of more security awareness than we were before, right? Because now we have new threats, right? Since everyone's working from home and they're on their own network, we have to worry about, hey, what if somebody stands up a rogue access point, right? That's one of the examples. And another thing that hasn't changed is the need for remote accessibility, right? Before we needed remote accessibility because people are traveling, people are going to meetings, people are working from coffee shops, right? So that need is still there. And then another very, very important need is we need to help our users stay secure. We can't just say, oh, this dumb user doesn't know anything, it's all their fault, right? We have to explain to them why we're putting these measures into place, as we did before. We still have to do that. But now we have to just take it up a notch just because of the expanded attack surface.
No, I like it, and you mentioned some of the I think they call them kid scripters or hackers or people who are bored in their bedrooms, especially during a lockdown.
Script kiddies, I think.
Oh,
is the term.
That's it. Yes. See, I'm not even getting the terminology right. No, I like it. I like the change. Joe, in the pre-conference call, we kind of mentioned, well, what has COVID brought to the surface that we've been putting off? Maybe that's a good angle, because throughout this day, we're going to be seeing many examples of things of the future. But what have we been putting off?
Oh, I lost your last bit of audio there. Sorry.
What has COVID brought to the fore or the surface that we've actually been putting off? We can ask what's changed, what hasn't. What's it actually brought to the surface that we may have been putting off? I know you were quite keen to talk about that.
Yeah, for us, I actually look back in some of the first chats that we did with Teams, Zoom, Teams, the video conferencing platforms was in April of 2018. So that's when we first that's when we first put the platform up, when it was first starting to come out. And we realized yesterday how, as everybody goes, oh, you can do all that now? That's great. Look what we've been able to do in the last few months. And I said, we could do it for 2 years. Now you want to do it because you have to, right? So what it brought up is us moving towards more of those separate collaboration tools. We're fortunate here. We have just one location. So people who want to talk to somebody literally just walk up and say, hey, I need to talk about this. Most organizations are separate geographically or even different buildings. And so it's not convenient for them to do that. So we can, so that's what everybody did. Well, now the fact that we need to stay socially distant, especially since that's one of our requirements to stay open as we are, since we opened in July, we have encouraged people to say, hey, we have this Teams now, you can actually chat back and forth, and it's new to them, but in our, so it's just a faster adoption of things that maybe they never would have even looked at, but because now the government tells us that we have to. Thing as a video conference, it doesn't even matter. Now everybody's happy to have it, especially Zoom and all these things we're doing. So that's been a major thing for us that's just sped up things that maybe people would have gotten to. They are kind of forced to do it now. We've never forced it from our side. If somebody doesn't want to use a piece of technology, I don't want to make their daily life drudgery. I don't want them to hate the IT department because, well, we got to do that now. We never had to do that before. I don't even know what it does. We don't want users that are unhappy. We want people to come to us with their problems, especially on the security side. When they have an issue, we want them to feel comfortable with us saying, well, they're going to make me do something if I call them. That's not what we want. So again, just getting faster to these types of technology in terms of collaboration tech with Teams and all that. That's been something that's sped up for us because of all this.
Fantastic. And of course, throughout the day, we're going to go into the MDR of the future. We're going to ask if Kaspi is dead. But before all of that, you made a good point. People are asking for a branded video conferencing software that maybe we're using. And perhaps they had another branded one already in existence for free. It's an interesting dynamic. Mike, nice to see you. How are you doing?
We lose Phelan?
I think we lost him.
No, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
He's just really good at being still. Okay, there you are. You're back.
I'm back. I thought you guys went. Okay. Mike, what's changed for you and what's not changed for you?
So what hasn't changed? Let's start with that. Security continually fights for budget and for relevance. I saw, not a tweet, but I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday from Chris Roberts, a friend of mine, that's also talked in some of these different conferences. And one of the things he said kind of shocked me. A CEO of a specific company that I'm not going to mention basically said they heard something about security on Fox News, and then they went to their security teams to say, well, what's this about? Getting your security knowledge from Fox News is not exactly, or any news agency is not exactly where we want to be in regards to security functions. The things that have changed is, like Eric and Joe said, whether we're talking about faster adoption, whether, like Eric said, VPNs, remote workforce, etc., the supply chain has become much more relevant and much more of a security concern than it was in the past. We've been talking about this for years, but now it's starting to become mainstream. Thank God for that. So the second thing is risk intelligence. People are moving away from the traditional security mechanisms that we've had, and also the types of ways that we pull in massive amounts of information that don't really add the value that customers are expecting. The last thing is that we're moving into risk intelligence, and more specifically into something I'm calling, or the emergence of tactical risk intelligence. So the more attacks start to come to the surface, specifically in situations like COVID-19, where everybody's guard is let down and they're concentrating on other things, we're seeing a very huge uptick in the way that specific nation states are attacking critical infrastructure, health systems, research institutions, etc. So these are 3 points that we're seeing. They're kind of new. I mean, a lot of us that have been in this space for a while now, and also folks that have focused on military intelligence, we seem to see the same emergence of things, but it's now bubbling up to the surface, and people are becoming more and more aware of this. So definitely a few points there.
And soon we'll hear from you about risk intelligence as a concept. So that'll be really good. Nick, so in this wonderful world, who is the top post holder of tomorrow, given that they're going to have to deal with a multitude of stakeholders, the world of the MSS, the MSP? Is it that they're missing some sort of business skills? Who is this stakeholder of tomorrow?
Yeah, no, great question. I know that, early on in my IT career, I had been very solutions-based, loved to just be away from the customer, if you will. And through my journey, I kind of realized that, without the business skills, it kind of created a gap of trying to understand how to manage really 3 things, cost, risk, and revenue, right? And so, people, process, technology, there's a reason why frameworks exist. There's a reason why the economies of scale work the way they do. And as I started to kind of research and learn about frameworks, I started to understand how, without the business understanding, or at least some level of understanding, it makes it very difficult for an IT practitioner to really solve problems. We've heard the old age of, what's the adoption of this solution? What's the, use case for this solution? Well, all that kind of ties back to what problem are you trying to solve from a business standpoint? And if you're a software developer, if you're a security practitioner, if you are a BI, data and analytics engineer, it all kind of ties back to what is the enterprise strategy. And so I think that it's very much a good thing to have both business understanding as well as an IT understanding, but also realize that you're just not going to know everything. You can't, right? You got to lean on a team, whether that be, and by the way, a team of internal resources versus external resources is not the way to look at it. It's a way to look at your supply chains. I think we mentioned that a few times, that, we have to be open-minded. We have to bring in new knowledge and new skill sets to get to the new age that we're trying to get to, right? It's digital transformation, it's artificial intelligence, it's, it's this legacy to modernization that we're trying to move towards. And if we did it all, if we were there, we wouldn't need the help. But because we're not there, and because we're not open-minded, a lot of times IT kind of wants to be a John Wayne. And so I always say, look, team think is the way to go. Leverage your partners, leverage your resources, especially in the security space. Without, advanced analytics and forensics, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I would have been long gone, right? Witnessed already a couple of breaches and security things, which I'm not going to get into. But without those partners, I wasn't able to get to the end root cause analysis and then move towards remediation, which is key, right? Mean time to failure and all that kind of stuff is huge with security, right? It's all about time. And with those tools and with those partners, I think that's the way to get there. And having that business understanding to frame cyber, to frame, revenue it's a blended operation. Security is not an afterthought. It should be integrated into the genetics of the company so that when you do an implementation, you're doing it on the software side as well as the hardware side, and you're training it effectively with ongoing continuous evolution.
No, I like it, and I like you've thrown a bone or gauntlet, one of the two, to the vendor community. It's an important aspect. Partner versus internal team. I like that that angle. Eric, for you, who is this top stakeholder of tomorrow? We could give it a name, CISO, but it could look differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we stay in the framework of the CISO, the top guy or girl, a woman, is going to be someone who understands the business language. We have to change. We have to change, especially when you get to a certain level of the organization. You have to, and forgive me, my Alexa is on. We have to change our thought process and start thinking about risk. We have to think about. We have to understand the business strategy. We have to become a trusted advisor to our peers at the C level. And we have to understand where is the business going? Where do we want to take the business? How do we enable the business to achieve the business objectives? Then we change as a security community, we change our vocabulary from no, because the first thing we like to tell everyone, no, you can't do it because it's going to make the environment secure. And you rethink and say, how, right? How can we support the business in achieving its strategic goals? And then it becomes a conversation about risk management. Okay, we can achieve it. However, these are the risks. Understand the risk. And then it's a risk mitigation. It's a risk mitigation conversation. And then so the next level or the next top position in this particular community is someone who has to understand the business, have to understand the strategy, become a business partner, and become a trusted advisor in the aspect of risk mitigation. That's my.
I like that, and also Marsha from the audience has given you double plus. Really agrees with that. So that's really good. Okay, Nikolas, I'm conscious of the time, but Nikolas, who is this post holder of tomorrow, or what is this post holder of tomorrow?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So we're looking at this, the top post holder. We could call it CISO, we could call it CSO, and just say that that's on top of the CISO, or vice versa. We could call it the CIO. But who are they, and what's going to make them tick? Are they missing business skills? Do they need to work better with these third parties? What's that all about?
Sure. So they need a mix of business skills, technical skills, but what they actually need to be successful, in my opinion, is communication skills. Because one of the top skills that you need is you have to be able to take a technical concept and explain it to non-technical stakeholders, because a lot of the times they're the ones writing the checks. So unless you are able to articulate what value they're getting after spending, tens of thousands of dollars on Splunk or something like that, if they're not able to articulate that, then they're not going to be able to do their job correctly, because they won't be able to go to their boss and say, hey, look, the industry trend right now is we're seeing this type of threat actor and they're undertaking this type of attack. And unfortunately, it's new and novel, and we need this. We need to buy this in order to prevent it or to mitigate it. And if they can't articulate the value, then they won't be able to be effective in their role.
The value adder, and as Eric said, the department of yes, but, which I think is important. Joe, who is this top post holder? Because I guess it depends where we are. If we're in a museum, it's going to be different than a multinational. But what are your thoughts, Joe?
To follow on with Eric and Nico, it's a person that is willing to learn aspects of the business that are not their core competency. I think we do get a little wrapped up in what we know because we had to work so hard to get that knowledge, especially on the security side. So we have to be willing to look outside of that and say, all right, I'll just tell you a personal story. I do not like HRIS systems. I don't like the HR function like as it works. I understand it's completely necessary. The people who do it are really good at their jobs. I don't like those systems. It's just something that gets to me about the way that they work, right? But in order to be the CISO of tomorrow, or the person who's really going to understand, especially on the people side with the personally identifiable information, then you got to understand how their systems work. So you really have to be a user to get in there and go, okay, this is what they're doing. That's kind of a tough thing for a lot of technical people who go, I've spent all this time and all this effort learning how the security works. Now you got to learn another system. Yeah, we have to constantly be learning the systems of the users, because that's where the vulnerabilities are, right? We all know about the firewall side. We all know about the big picture stuff, but at the user level is where we'll really get hit. And most breaches are that place. So we've got to be one of everyone, apparently, kind of a thing. Like I'm going to be an HR person. I'm going to be this, be that, in terms of understanding their systems, so we can be valuable to Eric and Nico's point about that, saying we got to be good at business communication. If we don't understand the system that we're recommending to them because we haven't used it, it's really hard for us to show the value of that. So I think that person of the future has to know almost every system that they're dealing with in some way, other than just going, well, somebody told me this was good, and I think the security is good, so we should use it. I'm not saying we all do that, but I'm saying it with so many things out there, you can't know everything, but you got to really try to make an effort to understand everybody's business process as much as you can until your head explodes, and then you'll be good.
No, fantastic. It's nice. It's nice you mentioned the HRIS system, because we got a comment from Rachel. They've got many vectors of vulnerability, so perhaps you're justified in your view. They considered that it would be like Equifax. So that's an interesting comment. I know it's a segue, but that's good. Yeah, Nick's commenting too. Yeah, please keep those comments going. I like that. And I tell you what, Mike, I want to come to you, but do you know what? Why don't I come to you in your session? That way we make a nice segue, because this is really important. Sometimes we're criticized for going too specific in these conferences too quickly, but that's the point of this type of debate, because we're sort of getting everything in motion. We're drawing a picture of the end user MSS MSP relationship. And I think that's done that and given us a lovely San Diego feel to it, especially Joe, because you're bringing us to a landmark.
A little bit of a wide dynamic range fixing. These cameras are not that great at that. Maybe you can see a little better now since I'm not in it.
Fantastic. Well, please give our wonderful panel a virtual round of applause. It's a pleasure having you. I'll put you back in the audience, but please give our panel a round of applause. Thank you, Eric, Nick, Nikolas, Joe, and Mike. It's great. We're getting clapping. We're getting virtual clapping. Mike's clapping. Good. All right. I will see you soon, and we will move the debate along.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Shalini's clapping, Mike's clapping. Yeah, please keep those comments coming, because I am in end effect your champion. So people in the audience, they can use the chat function, they can use the Q&A function, but you can use me to do a bit of a chat. Just a few shout outs. We've got Brett in the audience. We're going to hear from him later. Dave is there. We're going to hear from you later. Eric, we'll hear from you afterwards as well. Glenn, nice to see you. Fantastic. But yeah, use me as your conduit. Obviously, we couldn't do this event without our wonderful supporters. We've read out a number of them before, but I'd like to mention Hakdefnet, because Hakdefnet and Mike Goedeker has been a very kind supporter of many of these events. Mike, you've just been on the panel. How's everything going?